Welcome, Simon. How are you doing?
I'm excellent. I've been looking forward to this for days, so really looking forward to talking with you and connecting with the
Yes,
audience. So,
and likewise. So this podcast, the whole premise about it is that we're really excited about the future of work here. I personally have been an avid sort of follower of what the trends that are happening over the past, 10 years in my time in talent acquisition. So, but I feel like we've never before seen a time like this in terms of the rapid shifts in the talent landscape, the rapid shifts in the demand in geographies, the rapid shifts in the way people want to experience work, and how the candidate now or the person working actually holds the cards. So, Simon, I'm so excited to get your point of view today and your expertise. Before we jump into that, what I'd love to do is for you to introduce yourself, tell the world your story.
certainly, yes. My role is Director of Leadership Development at Avanade. Avanade is an innovative organization. It's delivering digital and business solutions and design-led experiences for its clients. It is essentially a love child or a joint venture between Microsoft and Accenture. And just to give you some context, Avanade has had a phenomenal 2 or 3 years. We're now in double-digit growth for right the way through 2021, moving into 2022. We're seeing a number of quarters of $1 billion turnover. So we're moving rapidly. To put things in context, we are a 15,000 head employee organization at the moment, and we anticipate 90,000 by 2025.
So you've got a lot of work on your hands then, Simon.
Yeah, so it really focuses the mind based on the conversation that we're about to have. It really focuses the mind on leadership development in the future of employment and the environment and how that really needs to change in support of optimum performance, but also the optimum experience of employees also. And so to your point around things being driven by context, I absolutely think this is true right now. What I would open with, if I may, is a very human-centered perspective here. I absolutely see a phenomenal amount of opportunity as we move forward, primarily driven by what we're experiencing right now. This in no way, shape, or form decries the pain and the suffering that has been experienced by many people during this time. I hope that what we're going to talk to on this call will be representative of a very kind of inadequate legacy, I think. So as we share right now, I know that some of you on this call will also be experiencing some of this discomfort too, and some of the suffering. So please be aware that we're fully cognizant of that and want to be respectful of that as we talk.
Yeah, absolutely. And a really, really great point to start with, Simon. So thank you so much for that. So Simon, what are you noticing as the biggest sort of trend at the moment for you when it comes down to the future of work? What's keeping you awake at night, or what's keeping Avanade awake at night?
Yeah, I kind of, it's interesting to me when you think about what's keeping people awake and what we're focusing our attention on. It's the enhancement of what was already there. I think when we think about where we're at right now, if we look at the context, your earlier point, we've seen a number of different industrial revolutions, and essentially Klaus Schwab in 2016 talked to the World Economic Forum about the fourth industrial revolution. And pretty much what he was talking about was the coming together and the collaboration around digitization, kind of releasing billions of people to reach their potential. And he kind of focused on the imperative there around making sure that happens efficiently, effectively, in a way that optimizes people's potential and organizations' success and ultimately economies and countries' success. But at the core of this has always been a very clear and clean human need. That is, people need to survive. They need income to survive. What we're seeing now is, in addition to that, people are seeing a heightened need for purpose. So they're looking at their roles in a very different way, and they're looking at their organizations to really reflect that human impact that the organizations are having, and people want to represent and know that they are making a difference. And also people want to achieve a quality of life as they do that. You know, people have often talked about work-life balance. I think people are in a place now where we're seeing employees understand that work-life integration is the issue at hand. And if we think about the last 2 years and our personal journeys as it relates to our work, as we've gone through a number of lockdowns all over the world, we realize that people have built muscles. We are ultimately agile and we have the ability to adapt to our environment in a positive way. And this has actually accelerated the context for our employees and for our businesses in such a way that we can look at our environment and we can say, is what we did before ultimately helping us and helping our people? And is what we're offering our people ultimately helping them in such a way that we can release their potential, enhance their well-being, and really develop them in their careers? And to your point around what keeps us awake at night, it is that thing around the EVP. You'll obviously hear, this is one of the flip sides about working from home. You will get dogs in the background.
Absolutely. Many of my clients have dogs barking in the background. They're chiming in on my viewpoints and whatnot. So yeah, I understand.
They would chime in. But to your point, at the end of the day, it's going to be very strongly about EVP and how people are really feeling that they are releasing their potential and achieving their aspirations in the context of a very human experience. And that is not only people that support their performance in their workplace, people that understand their well-being and support that, but also understand their development and what that means. And I can talk a little bit more at some point.
Yeah. Are you okay to jump into EVP for me? And I've been working in employer branding for 10 years and talent acquisition, so I'm quite aware. But I think that a lot of people misunderstand what EVP actually is, and they feel it's brand, it's creative, it's this, it's the sort of stuff that goes out to market. Now that's a component of it, but I'd love you to just jump into and just really explain what EVP actually means.
Well, I think people and organizations put different hats on EVP, but I'm going to give you our 3 pillars for our EVP at Avanade, and that is distinctive experiences, limitless learning, and ambition for growth. In my journey across Avanade and previously in other organizations, I'm very clear that it's not just about what we take to our employees prior to them joining, but it's actually their experience throughout their life cycle as an employee, from look, join, enrich, leave, and remember, and understanding that we kind of have a responsibility to keep people in our family as they go through their life cycle through each of those stages, to understand that people have an expectation to experience high quality of experiences as they go through those distinct phases, but also that they are kind of respected in that journey. And I think we can see a lot of causality, we can talk to causality and correlation, but the reality is it doesn't take a lot of thinking through to realize that even if it's correlation, if we realize the phase at which people are at in their career journey as an employee, and make sure that we are distinctly connecting with what they need and realizing what they can do to offer the organization optimum outcomes, then you actually have a positive psychological contract based on great relationship and great process and interaction.
Does that not become, and my job here is to be very neutral and to go explore both sides, right? But does that not become quite a heavy lifting task for the employer to, I guess, cater for what every single person needs and expects from their work, their life, you know, because everyone's different, right? So what would you say to that?
So it's really fascinating. You know, I posed that question to the chief HR officer of Equifax when I was with Equifax, a lady that was a phenomenal insight in that particular sector. And what she offered up was, are really people that different? And so when we talk about inclusion and diversity, we can talk to that in a moment. But at the heart of things, in terms of people being human, we have very specific needs. And let's put Maslow to one side for a moment. The reality is we are probably more similar than we are different. And that doesn't actually mean that we have to treat people the same. We have to recognize differences. But broadly, people want to be respected. They want to have purpose in their work. They want to experience good and positive opportunities to influence and drive outcomes, because I genuinely believe people do. People don't turn up to work to do a bad job. They want to do a great job. And it's not unusual for people to realize that in the inclusion conversation, that they need to experience that. So irrespective of whether we're talking about segmentation, whether it's gender, race, ethnicity, whether it's based on age, all of the ways we can cut it, there are commonalities. To the point about difference, however, I think there is somebody said to me once, a leader in inclusion and diversity in another organization, she said to me, look, Simon, why do you think we pitch some of our initiatives at certain segments of our talent pool when there is such commonality? And the answer to that, from her perspective, was yes, the talent data tells us that we need better representation and we need to inform the slate, because we recognize there's great talent in a diverse talent pool, and we should respect that, as well as actually look at the capability that in that diversity. But she also said, look, if we actually focus in on specific groups, we have the opportunity to create a tide that raises all boats. And I think that's a really important thing, that by activating some of the differences and working to those differences, by association, we create an optic that drives certain issues. So, for example, if we think about inclusion and diversity, it's a big agenda right now. We're eliminating negative segmentation. So historically, if we look back at the previous revolutions, if we look at the Industrial Revolution, for example, that was highly segmented. You had people who were living in poverty, working in industrial settings with low well-being, but you also had people with a lot of money that were separated. By driving an inclusion and diversity agenda where people experience equal opportunity, sameness, and unification, we create a lens that actually raises issues of well-being through a clearer optic where we can see into other people's lives, and we can drive agendas across organizations through specific considerations in specific groups.
That's an amazing point, actually. I'm just thinking about post-production here, and I already have about 10 snippets from this show. We're 15 minutes in, which is absolutely amazing. So let's talk about this inclusion and diversity for a second. I'm of the opinion that it all stems from unconscious bias, and if we can remove that, then I think inclusion and diversity within organisations will be solved. But it needs to be solved within the process, right? It needs to be solved in the process. But I might be wrong. I'm not saying this is a one pill to swallow. Love to know your thoughts on it.
If I may add to that, the signal's breaking just slightly, so hopefully you can hear me. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Cool. One moment, just to double check. Kevin, you on the call? Is this all okay? Can you hear us there? Sorry, just before we come down, we're going to have about make sure you've got solid recording here.
I can hear you fine now.
Cool. Okay, because if it starts to persist, then let me know, Simon, I'll switch internet. But yeah, we'll cut this part anyway, that's fine.
So just picking up on that point of inclusion and diversity and bias, here's the thing: is you've identified that there is a point of bias. If we can solve for biases through awareness, the supposition is, doesn't that resolve the issue? The reality is, no, I don't believe it does. I think you've kind of alluded to the answer to the question, which is, I think, not only do we have to be aware of our biases, and we all have them, we also have to be merely mindful of our processes and systems in our organization that drive biases or accentuate biases for particular groups. And I think therein lies the journey and the value in evidence-based management. And if you ever come across a guy called Rob Brinner, who used to be at the University of London at Birkbeck, he's a great advocate of evidence-based management. And I think this is the essence here, is that it's not, when we think about diversity, there's a lot of data out there that talks to diversity as an enhancing performance. His position is, it's not just about enhancing performance, it's morally the right thing to do. And that's the essence of how we inform a broader positive ecosystem that people want to be involved with. And in fact, I was speaking to one of my colleagues the other day, and I was talking about kind of what would be the deal breakers for you in an organization. And she said, look, inclusion and diversity is front and center for me. It's not something that, based on her race or even her gender, she felt she needed to have in order to enhance her career or her income. She'd already been very successful. But the reality was she wanted to be involved in an organization that actually espoused values that were important to society and actually helped her feel that her career was of value, not just to her, her family, but also the future of humanity. And I think that feels fairly kind of a big rock to go for, but why not in these current times?
Absolutely. And so let's jump into, so you've had a great couple of years as an organisation. Obviously, the world has been in a very precarious situation. We all understand that. However, prior to pandemic and then now, how has your perception, and Simon, how has your perception of the world of work shifted, or has it shifted, or did you see this trend happening anyway?
Yeah, well, was it happening? I would say it was happening, but it was happening slowly. I think, if going back to the analogies that we offered up earlier on in terms of the first, second, third, and now fourth revolution in technology, I think what's actually happened here is that we knew that digitization was offering billions of people opportunities to leverage their potential in really unique ways. That said, it was moving very slowly, and everybody in this call will know that the most obvious signal of this rapid change is how we've changed our norms around how we interact with people in the workplace. That is absolutely okay to flex in our working environment. We're much more results based than we were jackets on seats than we were even 3 years ago. It's okay now for children to walk into a call in a way that, if you remember, there was a gentleman on a BBC interview 3 years ago, and it hit the press just because his daughter.
I remember that. That was fantastic.
So
one of the best videos I've seen.
Yeah, and now
just quickly part of this, Simon. I'm just going to switch internet because I understand that I've got an unstable connection. I'm really sorry about this. Let me just switch internet. Just bear with me 2 seconds, okay? I'm going to get to my hotspot, which should be fine.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's going to be a lot better. How's that? Does that sound okay?
Much better now, thank you.
Cool. So we were discussing, the BBC ad. Actually, what I will do is in post-production, we'll put that advert in, because not the advert, sorry, the snippet from the BBC news, but because that was absolutely hilarious. But you're right, that was quite a rare occurrence, right? Now it's as standard as every day. I was discussing earlier with you on my previous podcast with a gentleman named Chris. He works for Manpower Group, and he's sort of head of employer consulting. And my son was just there, 7 months old, just playing around, but then he was sitting on my lap at times, and that's normal now. And I think do you feel that's a positive change, or do you feel like that's still that is not so productive for meetings?
I can only give you my personal perspective. I've not come across anybody that's seen it as negative. There are obviously moments you were presenting to a board, then it probably wouldn't go down so well. But that said, I absolutely think, particularly as I'm obviously in the leadership space a lot of my time, I think what this issue has offered up to leadership is a space of being authentic, kind of vulnerable, human, in ways that allow their teams to connect with them in a really powerful way. You know, there's relationships that we never thought we could get built through these cool situations that we are now seeing, and people are laughing together, and the norms around what we're doing are totally changed. But I'm telling these guys on this call everything that they already know. So yes, I do believe it's made a massive difference.
And so throughout the lockdown, how did you adjust to you know, the severity of, you know, Zoom calls, meets, you know, that type of thing? Because it was quite a culture shift, you know, for everyone, I think, across the world, right?
Yeah, and I think certainly from the conversations that I've had with people, I think this has definitely been an evolution. I would say that people threw themselves into it, didn't understand what it meant. Some people have been burnt out in the process. There's no doubt about that. And learning to survive through back-to-back calls has been a difficult journey, I think, for everybody. That said, I think what we've now experienced with these new norms is an appreciation that people do need space. And you know, putting in a 45-minute call with a 15-minute break is not unreasonable anymore, and people do understand that flex that's required. So I do think the high potentials that I see that have come out the other end of this are the people that have been able to manage their time and say no in the right way, and find the white space that they've needed in order to do the reflective work at the same time as the video call. So I do see a lot more kind of management of energy, I think I would say, than I have before.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I don't know about you, but I find that actually the energy required to run a workshop on a call is like, it's far more exhausting than it is if you say we're in a boardroom and bouncing off other people's energies, right? To that point. Now, Avanade is a very creative organization. Okay, so how have you guys found the collaboration, and has it been as efficient as you had, you know, prior to lockdown, or has elements of it dropped?
Well, this is where our structure has played to our advantage. As a consulting organization, essentially, rather than things being functionally structured, we are structured as talent community. The thinking behind that is, if we are client facing, you will have a number of talent on a bench across talent community, whether it is advisory, whether it's IT, whether it's legal. All of those people will be on bench, and they will be funneled into particular client-facing projects. Then they fall back onto bench. By its nature, that structure has informed the collaboration that is required. So we've ultimately found that that actually hasn't been as significant culture change for us as we thought it would be. Also, without banging the drum here, one of the reasons I joined Avanade I think it's 6 months ago now, was that I looked at it and I thought, hey, look, they're a company that focuses in on technology, consulting, and design-led solutions. We've all experienced pain in our respective companies, and I wanted to find a company that would get it right. I have a better chance of getting it right based on the fact that that's what they sell, full stop. So I think your point about collaboration, it's not been the pain that we experienced, probably based on our structure and some of the technology we have available to us.
Amazing. And so let's talk about technology. What do you think the biggest or the most disruptive technological innovation is going to be to the future of work? It's quite a broad question.
No. I think I think the reality is, long story short, someone's going to turn around and say, meet your colleague, Mr. or Mrs. AI. And the reality is the reality of that is not clear to people right now. But if we think about a lot of the work we do, I suspect a lot of people on this call would, if they were to do a bit of an analysis of the work they do, there would be a chunk of it that they would say, really? my talent is probably best used elsewhere. I'm kind of getting bogged down in some of this stuff that I really don't want to do, and probably not adding as much value as I would like it to, but I have to do it anyway. I think the reality is, with AI in place, we will be able to hand off more so we can actually focus our potential on things that are actually going to add more value. And I think we're going to be able to leverage AI to a better degree. So I think, to our point about technology, I think that will have an impact in terms of what we're expected to know. I think we're now dealing with talent groups where there is a specialism in technology. I would say that you will see leaders in the future, and I don't mean leaders. There's obviously the formal leaders. There's leaders in the matrix, and we can think about ourselves as leaders too, as individual contributors. We will all need to be IT savvy, way more than we did before. So the reality is, we will have kind of a high level of decision intelligence, and I think to that point, things will move quicker. We'll get better decisioning, better modeling, and obviously, from our point of view, that frees us up to do things that are obviously focus our attention in different ways. So I think that's one piece. I think the other piece I would share around technology, I think we'll see security is going to be an issue here. It always has been. In fact, anybody that knows the credit industry will know that Equifax was involved in a security breach back in 2019. And I won't bore you with the details of that, but the reality of that was based on probably a fragmented infrastructure. It was in the Senate hearings, they indicated that it was down to a Chinese, an arm of the Chinese military. That said, the reality was that the security was not capable. However, moving forward, I think we will probably see, if we look at recent Gartner reports, we'll see by 2024, we'll see kind of cybersecurity meshing. And what that really means is multiple platforms talking to each other, taking out the gaps. So I think that's true. And I think you'll see a lot more integration of platforms. And I think, more importantly, when we think about the future of work, when we think about customer experiences, user experiences, and employee experiences, we're actually going to see a unified technology where we actually see a more holistic experience that our stakeholders engage with. Right now, we have knowledge platforms that are pretty fragmented and siloed. I think based on the integration of AI and the connectors between these platforms, we'll see a lot more holistic future based on the advantages that technology will give us. And you could argue that if we are continuing this new way of working, in terms of whether you call it home working or whether you want to call it remote working, the definitions there are still up for debate in terms of what they mean to different organizations. The reality is that comes also with some real challenges in terms of technology that are forcing this integration very, very quickly, so that we have a much more end-to-end and joined up execution in our working lives.
What is your take on the metaverse?
The metaverse.
How do you feel about that? Yeah, how do you feel about the metaverse? So essentially, so what we've done actually, and we've got one of the guys playing on the call, is for our ATS that we run and we built, we've actually pigeonholed a couple of developers to focus just on the metaverse and actually build virtual reality interviewing. So you pop a headset on Oculus Rift, and then you can actually interview with someone in a room in the metaverse, basically. And all companies can create their own rooms and whatnot. Anyway, so it's a work in progress. But what are your thoughts on that? Now, there are some people that argue the metaverse is a gimmick, right? And obviously, you think about it, it does feel like that, because I can still interview you right now, Simon, and still get a really good experience with you, and find out about yourself. You can do the same with me. Now, Nike, just this week, we've done a press release. They've purchased a company that builds sneakers in the metaverse, and you can buy. So they're going to build these sneakers that you can buy for your metaverse avatar. So it does feel like there's a lot of people pushing towards this space, a lot of organizations. So will that become the new norm, where we have an avatar of ourselves in the metaverse, and that's how we interact in the world of work?
Yeah, that's a great question, isn't it? And I think what I'm going to do in response to that is hold up my hand, and I will, with massive embarrassment, tell you that when I was 15 years old, one of my friends was selling Cellnet telephones, and it was a box this big. And I said, "Why don't you just go to a telephone box?" And here we are with here we are now with things that many people at the time thought were unusual. Now they're
Mm.
just norm. I do think, if we think about, if we take this back to employee experience and inclusion and diversity and our acceptance that not only do we technology is something that we shape for our own purposes, and that will always be at the center of this, whether it's market driven or whether it's driven by our talent marketplace. People have a choice now. It's a spectrum for sure, but there is something in the metaverse around what identity do I want for myself, and how do I want
That's
to
interesting. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. You've really just inspired something there in me. That's very interesting what you say. Like, what identity do I want, and who do I want to be? Do you know what I mean? That's
exactly.
fantastic. Sorry, carry on.
And that's essentially the driver here for me, is that it gives us the choice to accelerate a brand, a reputation, a brand, a persona that is going to optimize our experience in our lives. And that, why wouldn't we? If
Mm.
that
Could that, just a point to that, could that not inspire bad actors as well, though? Do you know what I mean? How do we distinguish between bad actors and, people who just genuinely, how they want to represent themselves?
yeah, and I think I agree. There will always be those people, and I think there already are, but in a kind of different
Yeah.
context. And I think this is probably where AI will play out. We'll probably see kind of kind of predictive modeling that will capture
Mm.
some behaviors that will kind of
Mm.
flag up some of the
I
bad
think
acts.
there'll be something really important around, like, you don't need to have your own self represented in metaverse, but you need to maybe submit biometrics so it validates who the person is, all that type of thing.
Exactly.
Which is, but I mean, it's very exciting. I mean, it's, to quote Mark Zuckerberg, and obviously it's his product. So to quote Mark Zuckerberg, it is the next frontier of the internet. And similarly, blockchain is the next frontier of security, data security in my mind, right? Systems of records, that type of thing. So
Yeah.
we are at this stage, Simon, I think, that is super exciting about the future of wherever we're heading in, right? We've never seen sort of such a rate of technological advancement, and similarly, we've never seen a rate of shifts in mindset. So, to that note, what are you noticing candidates, and obviously I know you work within the leadership side of things, but what are you noticing, sort of the people coming into your organization, what are they expecting from an employer today?
Yeah.
Now,
Well,
you're talking about purpose earlier on. That's great. If you could elaborate on any of those pieces, sorry.
so to that point, I think the reality is people are like anybody. It has always been true that there is that primary and recency effect. If you think about employees as essentially client zero, um, in essence, that onboarding and exiting experience is a really powerful point of integration and buy-in for people. So people want absolutely a smooth talent acquisition process for the organization to deliver on those great EVP promises that they're being shared. And also, when we think about onboarding, a lot of us kind of disregard that onboarding thing as an experience. And this is again where the metaverse could play out really, really well for people. I've even in a kind of an innovative way, one of my previous bosses was interested in 3D glasses as it related to this experience for people prior to even joining, so they could do a walk around the buildings. But that aside, I think to that point, people, contracts are broken, psychological contracts are broken. And somebody said, one of my peers who was involved in this in the past, and I'm not sure I totally agree with it, because I think loyalty and feeling part of something grows, but our hope to feel part of something is very high at that point of entry. So people, we absolutely have to deliver on that. And rightly or wrongly, expectations are very high. So the onboarding thing, can be a bit gnarly. We kind of sidestep it as organizations, but it is the point of perfect momentum for an individual that then integrates them into a role. What if I may share, one of the things that's happened at Avanade, and it may well be, again, as a function of the consultancy model, is that we don't have titles of managers per se. There are managers, group managers, senior consultants, but rather than a reporting manager, we have what we call career advisors. So every person has a career advisor in the organization. The purpose of that individual is that they support the individual's performance, that's a given, their well-being, and their career development. So to your point about what do people expect, an individual who is totally there for somebody in their journey and is advocating for somebody and holding a mirror up to them in support of their development and their career progression and their experience is a very powerful thing. And it's something that I actually thought I couldn't get my head around to start with, because I've been through the obvious structures in many organizations previously. And what I realized was, through a career advisor model, I actually have not only a superior who's been in the organization before and kind of will hold me to account, I get that, but I would expect from that person a career development plan, or what we call in Avanade a forward story, which is a development plan essentially. So here's my career direction, here's my development plan, and holding me accountable for delivering on that myself, because they're not going to do it for me, I have to do it. Having that journey where somebody helps me drive my network, identify the assets that I need to go after in order to be upskilled to inexperiences. I'm not talking about capabilities now, I'm talking about identifying the experiences that I need to have in order to be ready for that next level in this role, in this company, or in another organization, should I wish it to be that. And so to that point, it's important to your question that we are fulfilling that journey from look, join, enrich, leave, remember. And I think that's what I would offer up in short around what people are.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting around the point you say, remember, and that's quite realistic around people and the way they live their careers today. You know, the average candidate will stay within an organization 2 to 4 years. So when you're talking about remembering, that really strikes a chord with me around the fact that, look, we know that people are going to leave us. We want them to add value when they're here. We want to set them up for success when they're here. But when they leave us, we want them to refer us as an employer. Like, I used to work for Apple, you know, way before my time in recruitment. But I still remember that time with such fond memories. Do you know what I mean? Because I learned a lot, I developed a lot. It was a really great 5 years of my life. So technically speaking, I would be a referral of someone to, you know, promoter of them. So I really like that. So we're looking at, and I see that your background is learning and development, right? And this is a hot topic for today, you know, for the well room, given that we have such a exacerbated skills gap in, I think in a lot of spaces, not just technology, but actually quite a lot of spaces. Similarly, and I think we have a soft skills gap as well, where it comes from, you know, that people aren't able to communicate. Well, there's a lot of people that aren't able to communicate as effectively as, you know, a time before we didn't have, you know, the ability to email so, I guess, flippantly, the ability to just send a text message instead. You know, you had to actually talk to someone. So how are you guys finding the skills gap at the moment, and what are you guys doing to, I guess, mitigate it? Because it's only a problem that's going to get worse, you know.
Yeah, and I think you called out an interesting point straight away. Let's put functional skills to one side for example. Those are kind of technical skills based on workforce planning. If you've got the right workforce planning and the right budget in place, then okay, let's leave that to one side. That's a whole other conversation. But to your point around, happy to revisit that, by the way, if you want to. But to your point around the capability gap as it relates to the softer skills, when I think about leaders now, we're really thinking, it's again, there's a philosophical position around what an organization needs from their employees, but I would argue that there are very common themes, irrespective of whether someone's an individual contributor, a supervisor, a manager, a senior manager or a leader, that actually a high degree of emotional intelligence, learning agility, and you could argue those two things are connected, and an ability to manage their energy, as we mentioned earlier on in our conversation, is super important. Those things, in my view, irrespective of the development experience I've been involved with, irrespective of the seniority, everybody comes back and says, I don't have the white space to do that thinking. I don't know how to delegate. I don't know how to manage myself in these situations. And that actually creates a massive industry around kind of assessment. And there's some great kind of assessment tools. And you think I'd be highly bought into this stuff because obviously my background is in as an organizational psychologist. So you'd think I'd be all about that. But I do think there are some cornerstone capabilities that are based on giving yourself the white space to reflect, prioritize that reflection, and identify the network that will support you in your journey as you're aware of the delta and what you need to go after. In that journey and in that consistent prioritization and activity is an opportunity to stay closely connected with your purpose. With your purpose comes a higher quality of life, irrespective of how busy you are. And I think that then allows leaders to work well. It allows employees to understand the journey they're on and the relevance of how hard they're working and the impact they're making. And so I do think those are kind of things I would offer up there. So it's about capabilities, yes, but connecting those capabilities with experiences is super important. So one of the things that I would share very briefly with you, and I know that organizations have competency frameworks, so that's all good. That said, what I've done in Avanade is I've looked at different talent segments, and I've asked the question in consultation with our HR partners and key stakeholders, what are the top 6 or 7 experiences that this level of employee would need to knock out of the park in order to support what we call our Ambition 2025 transformation strategy and to support them in their career. And it's not the things that you would expect. Underneath those experiences are the capabilities that you would look for, like emotional intelligence, energy management, etc. But what I have found is if you can go to the business with some strong outcomes based on those experiences, say, look, if you do this, if you go through this journey or this learning path, or if you build out your training plan or your development plan, you will deliver this outcome for yourself that will either make life easier for yourself, your team, and enhance your career. So I think identifying points of relevance are going to be super important when we think about what capabilities we need. And that will vary depending on context, whether it's service industry, whether it's retail, manufacturing. And I think that's kind of the share I would have for you at this point.
Do you think, and I've got literally 2 questions before we open up to everyone else for questions. Do you think everyone can be a leader within an organization? Like, do you think everyone can rise to that sort of level? Or is it not, or are there just certain people who just maybe don't want to be, or just can't be, because of their personality?
Yeah, it's a fascinating question. I think firstly, sorry to get textbook, but in terms of how your organization defines leadership is going to be really important. But if we take one definition in terms of delivering strategic success to the organization and making those decisions and bringing people with them, some people want to do that and some people don't. So I think you can look from 2 perspectives. You can say that some people execute and they evolve. I think everybody has a capability and the potential to do so. Whether they want to do so is another question. And therein lies that conversation around person, environment, fit. There are some people that absolutely love doing what they're doing and building solutions and taking that to the clients. There are some people that love being truly strategic, and there are some people who have the agility to do both. And I think I actually had a conversation with our growth markets HR leader the other day, and I kind of said, do you think people who kind of become senior leaders, do you think they always had that strategic view? Do you think they kind of did that, got close to the rock face because they had to, and the mere fact that they wanted, their preference was strategic, allowed them to kind of take that next step up? And they kind of agree that that's probably true. There's a degree of individual preference there. And I was listening to a very brief, it was Simon Sinek, I think. It was a very, very brief clip. And he argued that often people are successful because they want to be, and the people that aren't successful perhaps don't want to be as much as they know. So we can. There's a lot of people who can say, "I really want to be a CEO," but are they really prepared to do what it takes to be a CEO? I'm not sure I would be.
Well, that's what I mean. I don't know what you feel about Jordan Peterson. I've one really enjoy his works, and obviously I think he's got a very misunderstood name in the world and a misunderstood philosophy. Obviously, early on he was quite quite a character, and I think he realised that actually that's not the way to go. But now he's very speaks a lot to what. It says about leaders at all levels. They have to be very highly conscientious, right, to really, really get into a certain level, and also they have to work really hard. And actually, some people don't want to do that. Do you know what I mean? Some people just do not want to do that. And I think, from my perspective, yeah, it's difficult. And I think probably even at your level, Simon, it's difficult to get to where you've gotten, right? Because you've had to really work hard, and so. I don't disagree with the fact that, people who want to get someone have to work hard, absolutely. But I also don't disagree with people who, hey, if I just want to come and do, I've got some amazing developers who work for me, right? They just want to come to work 9 till 5, do their really solid development and then leave. And we don't mind because they do great work, it doesn't matter. And I think that's why I asked that question. Could everyone become a leader, irrespective of if they want to or not? Could they do it? Or is there innate personality traits that just will not make a leader?
To your point about personality traits, we're getting to kind of nature and nurture territory. I honestly think there is a personal choice there. I think that we can work against some of our traits, and if you look at trait theory, there are points of crisis that actually change personality, and it's whether that crisis is significant enough for the person to pivot in a way that is aligned with their purpose and their sort of sense of authentic self. And I sense that there are people who can do that. There are leaders and there are employees who get kind of nudged into a space and they stay there. And there are people who kind of organizations, everybody will know them based on their own career journey, I'm sure, who get into certain roles. Whether it's thought leader status or kind of SME status within the organization or leadership status, and you think, how the hell did they get there? And kind of the organization puts up with them. To your point about where the future is going, I don't think people who are not matching their style with the needs of their context will win in the way that they did previously. And I think this kind of raises this kind of fourth revolution, as it were, will drive some kind of acuity around whether an individual fits, and if they are not developing themselves effectively, whether they are in the right place or whether they should be kind of tracked to a space that is more authentically them.
Yeah, and I think that's another piece there is around the way in which, like, you can't just force someone. So I'm, say for instance, an accountant right now. We're automating our accounts teams going forward, but what we want to do is have you come over and become a developer. You can't just force someone to make that transition. So this is where we're gonna, with automation, I do feel like we're gonna face a massive hurdle when it comes to repurposing our teams. Because also, why, like, if I think about it, if someone comes to me and said, oh, well, you're an accountant, we don't have an accounts team anymore, but what we would love to do is have you go and do sales. You say, well, no, that's not what my career has been, right? So there's that challenge. I think organizations haven't even scratched the surface on approaching just yet.
The other offer I would have for you here is that there is a high level, to your point around the EVP and what are employees expecting of organizations now as we move forward is, I think our employers are expecting of us to facilitate an environment where people can find their joy, in inverted commas. And that means that what I've noticed, I don't know whether you've noticed it, I'm sure people on this listening to this podcast have noticed it too, that the reality is that people look for easy wins. The reality is, career development is not easy. Careers are wiggly by their nature, and it takes reflection, it takes network, it takes testing, it takes failing fast, and it takes support. And I think to that point, I think what individuals will expect of organizations is to set a culture where people, and this again is where technology will come in, I think it's already available, that people will be able to see through AI where their possible tracks will be in their career if they want to know different directions and what their next could be. So you could put an end spot in sales, even if you're based in technology or even in HR, and it will present with a number of experiences you need to get under your belt in order to be a relevant candidate for a role.
Yeah, funny enough, I was chatting to one of my previous Apple colleagues today. He's a growth director for a company called Enjoy. Don't know if you know them. They come to your home and set up your products basically. And he has almost gone into a role over the past 6 years after 12 years of opening stores and retail stores for Apple. He's almost gone into a role over the past 6 years for Enjoy, which is sales. And he said to me, I never saw myself, or you can call it sales because that's what I'm doing. But I didn't ever think that I was going down this route, but I am fundamentally selling, you know. And so yeah, that's a very interesting point you make. Right, listen, I think we need to open up to the audience and see if they've got any questions. If they don't, I'll have another question for you. But does anyone have any questions? Please raise your hand if you do. Cool. Kevin Childs. Kevin, do you want to jump in with your question, and I'll mute myself. Thank you, buddy.
Yeah, can you hear me okay? Because my signal's a bit low at the moment.
Yeah, can hear you perfectly.
Great. And I joined late. I was on a client call. I do apologise. So I don't know if you discussed this early on, but we're having deep thoughts on a couple of restructuring and relative to the future of work, etc. And one of those points is around this 9 to 5 working hours. Is kind of weird if you think about why 9 to 5 exists and the sort of working requirements now. What's your thoughts around, and I don't know if you discussed it, the sort of 4-day working week, the 4.5-day working week that Dubai's just done, the 3.5 days Switzerland's trialing, or what's your thinking on working hours?
That's an amazing question. Thanks for asking it, Kevin, and I appreciate you getting on when you've been working hard, so thank you for connecting. I would offer up here that this is something we've been piloting at Avanade already with great success, with the intention of scaling. And the reality is, I think there will be a point of alignment between the individual's needs and the organization's requirements. And I think to that point, you know, if we move away from, if you're thinking about global organizations, then we're working across time zones anyway. We're already managing our energy in relatively kind of remote environments based on our current circumstances. And you could argue that people are already kind of stepping up to the mark. Some people are 9 to 5 because their role requires it. The question for organizations is, are we retaining that person better by keeping them on a 9 to 5? If an individual is included and firstly trusted to deliver their results, supported through the assets we offer them to deliver their results, how they go about getting there is a kind of an exciting conversation, which allows us to grow our talent, retain them well, and engage them in ways that people want to stay. And we're certainly finding that people have stepped up to this opportunity. And as we scale, it's certainly, we'd expect that to be far more the norm. I want to respect also that there are certain circumstances where it's not possible. When you think about, there are certain sectors, if you think of, if you think about some of the security sectors that we talk to and public service sectors that we're dealing with, it's maybe not as possible, but certainly kind of manufacturing and retail, they're already moving in this direction based on technology and the opportunities technology can offer. So I think my offer in that conversation is in the spirit of possibility is to consider what the opportunities are rather than the challenges. And I think you're probably heading this way already, but I would argue that it costs, just put a fiscal figure on this, it costs a lot to bring in new talent that are, when we've lost great talent. Just on that point alone, it's got to be worth considering alternative ways of supporting people who are already doing a lot over the last two years to support their organizations.
Wow, I think that answers your question, Kevin, doesn't it?
Yep, that answers my question. That's really great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
And that was a fantastic answer. And Meg, you have your hand up. Do you want to jump in?
Hi there. Hi, Simon. Apologies, I did miss quite a large proportion of the call because I was on a client call. So I apologise if my question is repeating anything. I suppose my question really is around, obviously, from a leadership trait perspective, my personal view is that the primary trait for me, in my experience of good leaders, is empathy, and I wondered what your view on that was. I'm sorry if it's already been covered, but that's my question really, is what do you feel is the leading trait for a good leader?
Again, Meg, I feel humbled by the fact you're prepared to jump on a call having been right next to a client already. So thank you for that. It's interesting. I saw it on. I saw a post on LinkedIn just at that point, and I think it's absolutely true. You know, I think that if we are considering purpose, which was part of our earlier conversation, and the fact that as we move forward, our employees are really looking for heightened levels of purpose in their working lives based on the requirement to kind of integrate work and their lives as opposed to balance them. I think the reality is they want leaders who absolutely support their journey. And it's interesting when I think about the times in my career where I have been tasked with giving team members feedback based on performance. 99% of the time, that feedback lands well because of the level of trust and empathy they have. And I think if we unpick that, that's really common in a number of spaces, that empathy doesn't mean to say that we can't deliver tough messages. Empathy means that we can deliver the messages in ways that people experience that we have their backs and actually have their best interests at heart.
Brilliant. Thank you, Simon. I completely agree.
Thank you, Meg. Awesome. Well, what a fantastic podcast. I really, really appreciate you taking this time today, Simon. So if you could leave the world with a parting gift or parting point, what would that be?
I would say, look, we very rarely congratulate ourselves on the journey that we've been on. I think we're very focused on the future and what next, and I think this is wonderful. I think what you've created for yourselves, and forgive me, I say this with great humility, I know that I don't know you, but I kind of want to play that voice that maybe you're not offering yourselves, which is you've done an amazing job over the last 2 years. You've created phenomenal opportunities through multiple lockdowns, and there will be a great legacy based on some very sad circumstances, I know, but we have the opportunity to do things faster, quicker, and to enhance our experience of our careers and our employees' experience of our careers, and to create a future of work that is unique, and we will all look back on and say, wow, we wouldn't have wished that period on ourselves, but didn't we do some good stuff?
Made history, didn't we? Made history. So absolutely fantastic, Simon. Thank you so much. So guys, subscribe to this channel. We're doing weekly leadership, future of podcasts, and also the live experience. So if you do want to attend a live podcast like we've just done here. This is of course being recorded. You're probably watching a recorded version. If you do want to attend that, all you need to do is just click the link down below in the summary. And if you'd like to connect with Simon here, as you can tell, Simon is a passionate leader around leadership development, the future of work, and many other things. If you want to pick his brain, Simon, sorry, I'm going to tell everyone to come and pick your brain. If you want to pick his brain, you hit the link to his LinkedIn profiles down below. Connect with him. Simon, thank you again. It's been an absolute pleasure. And let's connect in about 6 months and have you back on the show, and we'll see how things have changed. What do you think?
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time.